And one of the things I really like too is during the Grand Prix, you guys were able to kind of flex your own creative muscles to be able to create something on your own. Now, were there any Grand Prix tracks that were either cut or overhauled completely, or any track ideas that you loved but it just didn't pan out?
Before we jump into the Grand Prix, one thing that people might have noticed, one of the important elements to me when we started remastering the original tracks was to always try to give it a stronger theme than what the original technology could offer. When you're thinking about the original track, you're talking PS1 games, so what you could model, what you could texture in the environment to be to be running smoothly. You didn't have the same level of power that we would have when we started remastering the tracks. One thing we did really early on is we started looking at every track that existed, and we were like, what can we do to reinforce, I'm thinking one track as a good example is Hot Air Skyway. What we decided to do was to make it like a floating casino. There was nothing in the original track that said it was a floating casino, but for the villain to be there, it felt totally right to actually have the theme, a stronger theme there. There was a snow track. We decided it was going to be like a ski resort for penguins. Oh, and I'm thinking about like the track for Tiny Tiger, putting graffitis on and metal statues, and then it was a kind of a big light show. So there are things that we started doing to just make the track more memorable in terms of the theme. And so then once we'd done that and we were happy with reinforcing some of the themes for each of the track, we applied the same formula to the tracks we were designing for the Grand Prix. I like when we're starting thinking about ideas that could fit together. So you think about the track theme without thinking about the layout itself, just what would be a cool theme. And then from there, we started thinking about, so what are going to be the additional outfits that the characters could wear? What are going to be the new carts that are going to be coming in that will match that theme? And then we start bundling, we start getting a big picture of, this is a cool theme, so let's go with that. And then what would happen at the time is that the design team, because we had a few designers on the team, would pitch one-pager ideas to me about what the layout would be based on the theme we had suggested. The designers would pitch their ideas, and then we would figure out which one we thought was more interesting. Once we start working on the layout of a track, look, I'm a good racer at CTR, but I'm not the best racer. So what we would do is we would use our QA testers' skills to determine if the track was interesting enough. For those who could master Blue Flame and could just stay on the track forever, or if we wanted to put shortcuts and everything, we would put the layout, the 3D layout, in their hands so they could try it out, make suggestions, make recommendations before we would start dressing up the entire track. From a grayscale point of view, we would know if the track was interesting enough, and if we could say, you know what, that's the layout, and then we can start like dressing up the environment. We had a calendar. I know the community sort of complained about the speed at which things were coming out. Because it was a racing game, I still believe it was the right pace, the right time frame to be releasing content. If you wait for too long and you release a track 3 months after the first one, for me, it was not the rhythm at which we could sustain the engagement with the community. We're talking about some of the tracks that were not used. Essentially, we used everything that we pretty much created. The only thing is we add some Grand Prix that were potentially planned if we were continuing down this road, but we already knew ahead of time, talking to Activision, that I think we did 8 Grand Prix. I think we were informed that there was a point where it was probably going to be the last Grand Prix we were creating. And so there wasn't much work thrown in the garbage in terms of like track layout. What we tried to do is figure it out before, on paper at least, or maybe if there were 2 ideas we're unsure about, you start working on it in a gray block stage, and then you can quickly figure out which one was the strongest, and then we would just pick it and start working with it.
So I have to ask, can you share a few of the Grand Prix that you had set aside just in case if they were going to continue, or is that something?
No, I don't mind sharing. Actually, it's funny because I was asking myself, what were the Grand Prix that we didn't do or we dropped? I remember, I think the one that we knew we were probably going to be playing with was the theme I called Heroes versus Villains. And the idea for me was to sort of like make a tongue-in-cheek approach to superheroes. Imagine if you're thinking about like Mega Mind, the idea of having a city So the track would probably been through kind of a retro futuristic city. Some of the main characters having superhero outfits, and then the villains having like super villain outfits. So it would have been something like that. So that was a theme that I thought was interesting. And for when I was thinking about the others, I was like, can't remember. Honestly, I can't remember. I think that was one of them. The reason why I can't think of any other themes, it's probably because we knew ahead of time that there was only, so much Grand Prix we could make. So I had this one in store, but, I can't think about the others that we had in mind, honestly. That was one that I remember I wanted to create if we had the time.
There was a set amount of time, and Activision just came to you and said, hey, this is the end date. Did you want to continue to do Grand Prix? Did you feel it was the right call to end the support when it did, or did you want to keep going?
Yeah, I would have wanted to keep going because we were having such a blast working on a game like this one. As long as there were people playing the game, I would have tried to come up with themes as long as it was necessary. So yes, of course, I wish we could have continued. But at the same time, I felt like we had covered a lot of ground based on what existed in the franchise, because even sometimes we were even bringing back obscure characters because we were diving into everything that had been created in the Crash Team Racing universe. I think there's been good Crash Bandicoot games and some less good. And so the thing is, it's like, what do we extract from each of them that could be kind of interesting or useful? Because there was, from Crash Nitro Kart, there are things that we would pick, and then there'd been another racing game. What was the other racing game?
Crash Tag Team?
Yeah, Crash Tag Team. So even from there, we picked some of the themes. Actually, from what I remember, the first theme that we picked, the Egyptian theme, was inspired by a track from that game. But then what we would do is we would try to extract like as many characters as we could, because to be honest, I think we're probably still holding the record. If we had tried for a Guinness World Record, I think we were holding the most playable character for a kart racing game ever. Once we were finished with the stuff we integrated, I think we had 55 playable characters.
It's quite a bit,
including a crate. So we were like, so what's could be interesting that people would like to have in the game? So as long as we could bundle themes, we would have tried to incorporate and add additional characters into the mix. But we were sort of like running a little short of things we could pick from.
With the Grand Prix and stuff, you would introduce typically new characters. Were there any characters that you wanted to bring to CTR but you couldn't, or were there just certain characters that, because there's a few people, I know the one character a lot of people talk about is like Willy Wumpa Cheeks. Were there these other characters that were originally planned, and were there any characters that were cut?
No characters were cut. It was just a matter of planning which ones we were introducing with each Grand Prix. And Willy Wumpa Cheeks would have been one of the characters I think that would have appeared at a later stage. I think also because in our Halloween Grand Prix, there's a kind of a fat lady. We had
Madame Amberley.
Madame Amberley, there you go. That was another character that we discussed bringing as well. So the idea was like, let's figure out which would be the most meaningful, or which would be better tied to the Grand Prix experience that we had created. So there weren't many characters left. I think we could have probably, I don't know, maybe there was like 5 or 10-ish characters left, but not that much.